Last week we got our first official plot synopsis for Jurassic World Rebirth, and whilst there's a lot of information there that has people excited or scared, there's one line in particular that stood out to me as really interesting, and it's this one. So our protagonists, they all find themselves stranded on an island where they come face to face with a sinister, shocking discovery that's been hidden from the world for decades. Now, assuming this is the island we've been seeing up until now, we know it's an island that InGen operated on. But what on earth is that sinister, shocking discovery going to be? A sinister discovery that's been in secret for decades. You'd forgive people for thinking they were bringing back the sales script, but I asked you folks at home in my community tab for your suggestions. I'm going to use your comments as a jumping off point for some theories, so thank you a bunch for letting me know your thoughts. Now, by far the most popular suggestion going around at the moment is the DX disease from the Lost World Jurassic Park. The novel, not the movie. The Dinosaur Heretic came in with a huge and very well thought out comment about this, but let's just take a look at the basic concept for now. For my answer to make sense, we need to ask why the dinosaurs aren't doing too well on the mainland. I think the easiest explanation is because a deadly virus is spreading among the dinosaurs, something like DX. I'd say Co-op would draw from real life inspiration and make DX a COVID-esque virus rather than a prion disease. The first thing to note here is that they've said they would change it to make it into a virus, because I see a lot of people referring to DX as a virus when in reality it's a prion disease. Now, prion diseases are brutal, brain-altering, fatal diseases caused by twisted up proteins. The primary way these diseases are spread is through ingestion. An animal eats another animal with the twisted protein and it spreads. In reality, this just wouldn't really be a problem in a post-Dominion world, and it certainly wouldn't be a threat to humans. So if we are going down this route, DX or otherwise, the dinosaurs need to be harboring a virus or something a lot easier to transmit than a prion disease. The sinister secret in this context is basically that InGen were aware of this virus, had perhaps experimented on it themselves, or indeed created it themselves as a method of control for the dinosaurs, and now in the wake of discovery they've hired the pharmaceutical company we already know about to track down the surviving resilient dinosaurs and other creatures to harvest the antibodies of the animals that had developed an immunoresponse to the virus. If you want another layer to the sinister secret, the Dinosaur Heretic added this. It may be that InGen was interested in this virus and wanted to study it further, but didn't want to infect employees or assets, so they began experimenting on the indigenous population of one of Las Cinco Muertas. Now, I don't want to go into spoilers on other things we've seen so far, but it certainly seems like the film could be setting up to have the native indigenous population of these islands be a factor in the film. And that would add a layer of malice and sinisteriness, it's a real word, don't look it up, to InGen's behaviour here. Now, this is my personal favourite theory as well, because I think it all ties in really nicely with what we've heard about the film so far, and funnily enough, ties into a theory I had absolutely ages ago about where the Jurassic World trilogy was going to go. In the wake of Fallen Kingdom, I suggested the third film in the series could go a Planet of the Apes reboot direction, wherein the spread of these animals inadvertently causes the death of humans via a dormant disease or virus transmission. The question is then, would Jurassic World do this when the ape films are still very popular and have done it themselves relatively recently? Regardless, our protagonists stumbling upon evidence of InGen malfeasance, perhaps carvings and paintings of how InGen arrived to the island and began to spread this virus that eventually wiped out the population. That certainly fits the sinister, shocking discovery aspect and would tie into the wider plot of the film quite nicely. It would also be a good way to explain how the native population was wiped out, and whilst I don't think Jurassic Park Hammond would have any part in such things, I do think later era InGen would at the very least try to cover up such happenings. Film Hammond was a good egg, so I think we have to assume that whatever the sinister secret is, it was probably being done behind his back. That's worth remembering. The second theory is also popular, maybe out of fear more than anything else, as said by Brachiosaurus 2276. Possibly the human dino hybrid. I know it's out there, but it's a possibility. Now, to find out why this theory is so prevalent, we must journey back to the early 2000s and Universal's attempts to continue the franchise in the wake of Jurassic Park 3. There were a few other writers involved along the way, but the most infamous iteration of this script is John Sayles' script for Jurassic Park 4. This script included a bunch of mad things like raptors called excaviraptors that could burrow underground, but the most egregious was the hybrid human dinosaurs. They're not as prominently humanoid in this script, but some of the dinosaurs have human and dog DNA to make them more obedient and able to be controlled, and some of the human mercenaries have dinosaur DNA to increase their vitality. Now, I'm not going to suggest this theory is likely, but when you say to me sinister secret, the very first thing that comes to mind for me is the discovery of those big glass incubation chambers you always see in like sci-fi horror films or indeed in Resident Evil games, usually being used to concoct some genetic abnormality for nefarious purposes. It wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility for this series. As Sagasol says, human experimentation maybe. I doubt Maisie happened on the first try. Now, Maisie is a human clone. It's a topic that wasn't ever really given any wider context in the Jurassic World trilogy. It was a little underdeveloped for me, and it seems like it's probably going to be dropped by the wayside. But we do know for a fact that human cloning and human gene therapy has been going on. Whilst I don't think these dino hybrids are likely to make an appearance because A, it's bonkers, and B, it doesn't fit that kind of primal theme the film seems to be going for, I will say it's not out of the realm of possibility that InGen were doing some form of experiment like this on the local populace. Now, it doesn't have to have worked, of course, but abuses of the indigenous population is not a stretch. They haven't appeared much in the films, but both Jurassic Park Trespasser and Jurassic Park the game make reference to the people of the islands, and of course Mount Sibo itself is named after one of their deities. They are canonical, and they at the very least were forced off the islands by InGen and the Costa Rican government. Perhaps rather than the dino-human hybrid option or the virus, they were simply killed off in secret. Perhaps they're still there. That takes us to another prominent theory. Wyatt Trippy 5939 offered the following. A couple of theories. One, which I'm really banking on, is that dinosaurs have existed in the world in very remote pockets alongside people and are just now being discovered. I think this is how we'll get accurate dinosaurs in the franchise, and the InGen clones will of course be the typical 90s designs. Now, there were a few other comments suggesting something similar to this, that dinosaurs have been around for a lot longer, well, they've been surviving basically, and that InGen didn't create them, that they instead modified the existing dinosaurs to make them more palatable for the general public. Now, there is a big bonus to this idea, that it justifies the inclusion suddenly of paleo-accurate dinosaurs. But there are a few issues. The first is, more than anything, the damage this does to the wider Jurassic canon. This would be a humongous shift on what we see in the original film, on fundamental canonical ideas like extracting dinosaur DNA from the mosquitoes in the amber. Now, it's entirely possible InGen were just putting on a show in the original film. They'd actually acquired the genetic material from elsewhere, but that feels like a gamble even bigger than the dino-human hybrids in some ways. I'm also not sure this would count as sinister. Sinister implies evil intentions, and whilst InGen being aware of and harvesting the DNA of a surviving dinosaur populace in secret could be shifty and shadowy, would it be sinister? I'm not so sure. This would feel like a huge swing, and I do think it's unlikely without some tweaks. So, if we spin off from that a little bit, I don't find it as unlikely that some of InGen's earlier dinosaurs have been living with people on these islands across the last 30 or so years. Perhaps before Isla Sorna and Isla Nublar, InGen were committing their initial experiments on other islands. Perhaps those initial experiments were more paleo-accurate and realistic before they decided to tone them down to make their theme park monsters, which we know is an active choice that they made to make the dinosaurs look like what the public expected them to look like. Maybe they made feathered velociraptors and they're out there on the fabled Site C, but they decided to make the ones we see in Jurassic Park when they decided to move over to Sorna and Nublar. Perhaps abandoning the native population to these aggressive, primal, early-made dinosaurs is what got that population wiped out, and that's the sinister secret. That's what makes that secret so sinister. I am starting to grow on this idea quite a lot. Another common theory is that InGen were experimenting with plain old hybrid dinosaurs all the way back in the 90s. As Chaotic Possum Gaming says, I'm betting on another hybrid that's been kept a secret. Would not be surprised if it's the Spinoraptor. It's the most popular hybrid in the Jurassic franchise that hasn't seen any film time. Now look, first things first, I deeply love the Spinoraptor from Jurassic World Evolution and would love to see it make a film appearance somehow. But I will say I don't think this is the time. Whilst it could potentially fit the Sinister theme, and actually some of the wider canon, as at the very least there's a suggestion in the DPG materials that the Spinosaurus is also a hybrid, I'd personally be very surprised if the dinosaur villain, inverted commas, for this film is yet another hybrid. We've had 3 of them in recent years, and I think given Rebirth's clear attempts at sort of aping the original trilogy and distancing itself a little bit from the World trilogy, it seems unlikely they're going to return to that well quite so soon. When I talk about hybrid experiments in the other theories, I imagine them as failed experiments, a weird corpse or two, not hybrids roaming around and antagonizing our protagonists. And I'd believe the same with this as well. It's not impossible, but for me it's more unlikely than some of the others. Those 4 ideas, DX disease, human dino hybrids, pre-existing dinosaurs, and an unknown hybrid dinosaur are by far the most common theories I've seen so far. And for good reason given how they tie into the canon as established across the past 30 years. I feel I should offer one entirely of my own making as the final one, but if I'm honest and you asked me much before this video what I would have said, I would say the DX disease is the most likely. Whilst it may be called something else entirely, I think the tie-in with the farmer rep who we know is going to be in the film, the dinosaurs not surviving worldwide, the tie-ins with the older canon, the novel canon, and the possibility of it being used for sinister and shocking purposes all fit in really nicely with a disease, InGen made or otherwise, having come about via nefarious purposes. I also think the film is at least going to attempt a more grounded tone akin to the original trilogy, and that means things like hybrids become less likely. As I suggested earlier though, perhaps it's simply that InGen removed the indigenous population. What if they'd used their early dino experiments as a human cleanup crew? I do like the idea that there's early realistic InGen made paleo-accurate dinosaurs roaming around there on the islands, and they've had contact over the past decades with the indigenous people. And I wouldn't be surprised to also see that represented in the new film. I just don't think those dinosaurs will have been there since the Cretaceous period is all. If it's not the disease, something like this is my second choice. It could actually be both. I think you could fit both ideas in here. But let me know what you think down below. Do you have a good theory that didn't get included in the video? Let me know in the comment section, and thank you to everyone who got involved. I only highlighted 5 or so names, but there were tons of great and some very funny comments. My favourite was the one suggesting that it's the raptor that says Alan and they're gonna come back. And I really enjoyed reading all your comments anyway. Throw me a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more Jurassic World Rebirth news, speculation, theories, leaks, absolutely bloody everything. And I'll see you lovely folks very, very soon. Cheers much love as always, bye bye.